And I believe that is the number one enemy of everyone, is not understanding what is actually going on in the world. It's only when you start to understand that you can make effective decisions and effective plans. Now, the question is, who is promoting ignorance? Well, those organisations that try to keep things secret, and those organisations which distort true information to make it false or misrepresentative. In this latter category, it is bad media. It really is my opinion that the media in general are so bad, we have to question whether the world wouldn't be better off without them altogether. They're so distortive to how the world actually is, that the result is we see wars and we see corrupt governments continue on. One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly, with open eyes, go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we will also have a peaceful environment.
Julian Assange, thank you very much.
Today we're alone outside the Ecuadorian embassy, where nobody cares about Julian Assange. Back to you, Ben.
Great work. Now let's get the fuck out of here, Rachel.
Hey, get back here. We care about Julian Assange.
Prison, under house arrest, and almost 5 years here in this embassy without sunlight. My children grew up without them. That is not something that I can forgive. It is not something that I can forget. It's something that I hope will be more than just about me. Because the reality is, detention and extradition without charge has become a feature of the European Union.
Policewoman, when you walk my way with your pepper spray, all I can do is watch your hips sway. So come on now, policewoman in your blue uniform, Let me turn you on. Arrest me. Arrest me. Arrest me. Police woman, don't you know that I will turn you on with your own baton? I will turn you on with your handcuffs on. Come on, police woman in your blue uniform, let me turn you on. When you walk my way, all I can do is watch your hips sway when you walk my way. Police woman.
Please talk. Can someone talk to me? Can someone actually just tell me where the US Embassy staff are? No, they're not answering. So the British High Commission are not answering the door to 2 British citizens wanting to ask questions. Pretty shoddy. And it's raining now. 3rd venue today.
And the Swedish episode was just a bogus red herring. The US Constitution protects publishers and journalists. This crime was just to have broken the silence. It provided, shown that we're complicit by failing to speak out against illegal wars and the attacks on this journalist who's actually provided the real truth and the deceit of Western governments. There's no investigative journalism in our lifetime who's equal the importance in terms of the information he has provided through WikiLeaks. He's called rapacious power to account. He's shown that our governments are supporting 70% of the military, including Saudi Arabia, which has an appalling record in terms of human rights and the treatment of women, but also is attacking on behalf of the United States Yemen, and we know that millions of people are at threat now in Yemen of starvation because they're closing the last port there, which is providing the humanitarian aid. At the same time, the drone execution that we don't really hear of innocent people all through the Middle East and any part of the world. Malcolm Turnbull can remain silent, or he can seize this opportunity and use his government's diplomatic influence to defend the life of an Australian citizen, a really top Australian citizen whose courageous public service is recognised by countless people across the world. He can bring Julian Assange home, and that's what we ask him to do right now.
Thank you. Right, we're gonna take it away now. Bye-bye, Beehive, until the next time. This will be where we come for emergency action. There's been a few people walking past today, taking an interest, which is great. It's just what we want. Some people are like, who's Julian? That astounds me, really, but anyway. Some people are like, we're with her, and I think those people really need to do some more investigation. But anyway, here we are. Free speech, freedom of press. Not 1984, if we can help it.
Everyone has heard of Pinterest. This is what it looks like before you log on. It's the home of cats. And more cats. And even more cats. And even some useful collections of information, like art galleries of the world. But why would Unity for J people want to use it? Because so long as you sign in with a Pinterest logon, you will find a rapidly expanding library that will help you do your research, write your blogs, dress your tweets and Facebook entries with good quotes, and generally support Julian Assange and WikiLeaks more effectively and with less effort. So what's in here? The top part of the page has resources for learning and writing about Julian and WikiLeaks. We start off with info and donations, which takes you to various official sources. Notice how a link shows when you hover over a pin. So if you want to donate to Julian's Legal Defence Fund, find that pin and click the link. Instant access is in a separate window. When you're done donating, just close that window and go back to the Pinterest tab. All the major WikiLeaks publications are here in roughly chronological order. The chronological order of some boards is not exact, but Pinterest wasn't really designed for this purpose and makes it difficult. Sometimes extra entries are added to a board. In this case, the criteria WikiLeaks uses for publishing items. As with all pins, if we want to see the image enlarged, we click on the plus sign, and there it is. Want to see where that list of criteria came from? Just click the link. If the source is a video, you will usually be taken to the exact part of the video, but when it is a long article or transcript like this, you may need help. Just use the find function on your browser and it'll appear. We don't have time to look at all the research boards, but two that can be really helpful are Small Bits and Speaking. Small Bits is a collection of quotes in meme form linked to the source of the meme. The WikiLeaks principle of scientific journalism is that all things presented to a reader should be linked to source, so they can see and judge for themselves the accuracy of what you're saying. If you want to use these memes, you just right-click on the expanded image and save image as. to download it to your own computer. Don't forget to associate it with the source link when you tweet or blog it, as you want to follow the WikiLeaks scientific journalism model. There's a growing collection of Julian Assange's speeches too, some with transcripts. Again, these are in roughly chronological order and are linked to the videos themselves. There's also an index at the top, which grows with every speech added. Click on it to explore the spreadsheet version of these speeches. The other research boards work the same ways. Recognition, which shows the prizes that Julian and WikiLeaks have won. Books. All the episodes of the 2012 Julian Assange show. And films about WikiLeaks. Where these are hostile, some commentary has been included too. Then we move into the fields of art related to Julian and WikiLeaks, often sourced from tweets, and music linked to videos or SoundCloud where appropriate. There's lots of legal stuff in law and lawyers, including links to relevant judgments. There's a small bit on Julian as a child and quite a bit more on what other people, OPs, have said about Julian in speech, writing, and some short quotes you can use too. Then we get to other resources mostly created by Unity4J. All the vigil videos are here, linked to the videos of course, plus a board for the vigil speakers. Then quotes from the vigils that you can download and use for tweets, blogs, articles, etc. At the moment, each is just linked to the video the quote came from. As we get more time, we'll try to link to the exact place in the video. If someone wants to volunteer to help with that task, that'd be great. Tasty Tweets is a collection of timeless tweets if you've run out of stuff of your own to say. Find one that appeals and click on the Twitter link. You'll be taken straight to Twitter, where you can just retweet that tweet. How simple is that? Then you can sign petitions, help to get more awards for Julian and WikiLeaks, find graphics to download, and see lots of suggestions for getting advice. Here are things that other people have been doing, mostly picked up from their tweets. Your action can be here too if you bring it to our attention. This Pinterest page currently has more than 1,000 pins and we're just getting started. Recommend it to friends who want to know about Unity4J but don't want to come to Discord. This is another way to share our collective knowledge and resources. We hope you enjoy the Pinterest page, make it popular and use it a lot to improve public knowledge about Julian Assange, WikiLeaks and their fight for truth in journalism and justice in the world.
In my dreams, I walk free in the city streets. 2,500 days plus 50 weeks. Doing hard time for these WikiLeaks. Trying to bring the truth out, man, it only gets you heat. And then they gag you. You don't get to speak. And when you get the leak, they try to hit delete. The masses of the masses, they want the shit discreet. That's why my middle finger's up to these sick elites. Free speech, it's the freedom of press. Take your deepest, darkest secrets, never leave them unsaid. If I'm a thief, then I'm a thief for the people you dread. The people up the red, white and blue, you keep them in bed. Seeing the sheep, keep them asleep. Deceiving the weak, keep seeking the leaks till you cease. And I see your defeat until I'm deceased underneath a freezing red sheet. Become a dead man, then I hit the switch and release. When Goldman Sachs is your creditor, you kill the messenger. Stories axed by the editor, you kill the messenger. Pay to play on the regular, you kill the messenger. Need a solace, any questioners, you kill the messenger. And outside my window a figure quickly creeps. They dark as night like some motherfucking chimney sweeps. Whiskey with my Mickey keeps dying in my kidneys weak. Silence in my risky tweets is what the grand jury seeks. I'm wanting peace like 7 years in Tibet. Now rest in peace like 7 years under threat. Cause I've released 7 vaults, they upset. They under the rape sentence, but the US still insists to rest. I guess it's a sin to take the truth and disseminate. MLK to Gandhi, take aim and eliminate. And I don't say I'm great, just wanna say what's fake. But if they kill me, a million others will take my place. The CIA's post like a knife the sharpest. All hypocrisy, lies, and heartless. They want to stop me, my life make my heart quit. Cause democracy dies in the darkness. When Goldman Sachs is your creditor, you kill the messenger. Stories axed by the editor, you kill the messenger. Pay to play on the regular, you kill the messenger. Need a solace, any questioners, you kill the messenger. When the vote count is irregular, you kill the messenger. You caught spying on a senator, you kill the messenger. Removing voters from the register, you kill the messenger. Need a solace, any questioners, you kill the messenger. In my dreams, I walk free in the city streets. 2,500 days plus 50 weeks. Doing hard time for these WikiLeaks. Trying to bring the truth out, man, it only gets you heat. And then they gag you. You don't get to speak. And when you get the leak, they try to hit delete. The masses of the masses, they want the shit discreet. That's why my middle finger's up to these sick elites. Playing on the regular, you kill the messenger. Free speech, it's the freedom of press. Take your deepest, darkest secrets, never leave them unsaid. If I'm a thief, then I'm a thief for the people you dread. The people want the red, white and blue, you keep them in bed. Seeking the sheep, keep them asleep, deceiving the weak. Keep seeking the leaks till you cease, and I see your defeat. Until I'm deceased underneath a freezer red sheet. Become a dead man, then I hit the switch and release. When Goldman Sachs is your creditor, you kill the messenger. outside my window, a figure quickly creeps. They dark as night like some motherfucking chimney sweeps. Whiskey with my Mickey keeps dying in my kidneys weak. Silence of my risky tweets, what the grand jury seeks. I'm wanting peace, like 7 years in Tibet. Now rest in peace, like 7 years under threat. Cause I've released 7 vaults, they upset, they ended the rape sentence. But the US still insists to rest. I guess it's a sin to take the truth and disseminate. And I'll pay the Gandhi, take him and eliminate. And I don't say I'm great, just wanna say what's fake. But if they kill me, a million others will take my place. The CIA's post like a knife the sharpest. All hypocrisy, lies, and heartless. They want to stop me, my life make my heart quit. Cause democracy dies in the darkness. Cause democracy dies in the darkness. You kill the messenger. You kill the messenger. Democracy dies in the darkness.
Feeling cold now, but got the heater on. Feeling sold out, even though I'm keeping strong. But can I hold out when every bit of freedom's gone? They want me rolled out, never to sing freedom song. I wanna see the sky, I wanna feel the rain. But gotta keep away from windows, that's some window pane. It's just a shame, couldn't have planned out all our dreams. Now I scream, cause there's a man in the machine. But the train is off the tracks, and damn, it's losing steam. I wanna call Christine, I haven't seen since 013. I'm missing life like 3 strikes each night. Seems like 3 nights ain't right. Can't fight, space light, hate life. Wanting to be snake-like, shutting off this gray life. In the dark, can't make light. But where I'm headed now is brake lights. Where I'm headed now, they break lights. Counting days like brake lights, feeling weight like brake lights. Had a great life, brake lights, brake lights, brake lights. Out of place like brake lights, in my face like brake lights. Counting days like brake lights, brake lights, brake lights. Sit here asking, what have I done? If these strings were cut, I'd see my son. And if I could just fly from this place, then I'd hold you in my love embrace. And if I could just speak to you now, I'd renew my vow and be in the now. Is this me in denial? Wanna remove stress from your brow and pay you back some way, somehow. But it's painted black, can see the way back now. But how's the house and how's your mom? I doubt the way the media portrays me makes you hate me. But to think you see that daily makes me crazy, that just ain't me.
This is without a doubt going to be this generation's Free Mandela movement. Every single generation must fight again the same battles that previous generations have fought.
Brake lights, counting days like brake lights, brake lights, brake lights, brake lights, brake lights, brake lights. Brake lights, brake lights, brake lights.
Our number one enemy is ignorance, and I believe that is the number one enemy of everyone, is not understanding what is actually going on in the world. It's only when you start to understand that you can make effective decisions and effective plans. Now, the question is, who is promoting ignorance? Well, those organisations that try to keep things secret, and those organisations which distort true information to make it false or misrepresentative. In this latter category, it is bad media. It really is my opinion that the media in general are so bad, we have to question whether the world wouldn't be better off without them altogether. They're so distortive to how the world actually is, that the result is we see wars and we see corrupt governments continue on. One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly, with open eyes, go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
Julian Assange, thank you very much.
Today we're alone outside the Ecuadorian embassy, where nobody cares about Julian Assange. Back to you, Ben.
Great work. Now let's get the fuck out of here, Rachel.
Hey, get back here. We care about Julian Assange.
Prison, under house arrest, and almost 5 years here in this embassy without sunlight. My children grew up without them. That is not something that I can forgive. It is not something that I can forget. It's something that I hope will be more than just about me. Because the reality is, detention and extradition without charge has become a feature of the European Union.
Hey everybody, hopefully you can see and hear me all right. My name is Susie Dawson. I'm a journalist, an activist, and the president of the Internet Party of New Zealand. I'm also an organiser with the Unity for J movement. Thank you for your incredible patience with us tonight. We have had a ridiculous time trying to get the stream together and set up yet again tonight. You may have seen my tweets. My live stream on my channel, my live stream event, somehow unlisted itself. So unfortunately, 3,500 people did not get notifications that this was happening tonight. On top of that, my computer is pretty much dying. So if I disappear, I'm really sorry. I may have to reboot and come back, but I will be with you as soon as I can. Hi, Kat, Kathy, Zanga, everybody saying hello in chat. I'm really happy that you're here. Okay, so we had a super successful WikiBees on Wednesday night, would have been Wednesday night US time. Hopefully some of you guys were here and remember it. You can go back and see it again on YouTube. Hopefully you can see it. We had over 100 people working live, and then we had many, many hundreds of viewers, if not thousands, on the Periscope watching it as well. So that was a really great start to the week. Unfortunately, we've had just constant interference and technical interference and technical sabotage ever since then. Jefferson is okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, I am having a bit of a bad hair day at the moment, but I did manage to put some makeup on, so hopefully I'm semi-presentable for you guys. Oh, and Garrison is asking for a link to the Zoom, and I actually messaged it to you on Discord. So if you jump into Discord and have a look at your private messages, you should have the Zoom link there, and you're more than welcome to join us. Hi, Isis Estrada. Okay. If you guys have any questions, let's just have a chat for a while. We've got a number of people that are wanting to join the stream tonight, so let's give them some time to get in and to participate. That would be cool. So from my perspective, it's a bit of a quiet week this week, but things are going to ramp up really soon because we have got the next vigil at the beginning of November. We've got the next Unity for J Day at the beginning of November. The press release that you guys put together on Wednesday night, we have got in the comms channels and Discord, just waiting final proof. We'll probably put it out first thing Monday morning at this point. There's not much benefit putting it out over the weekend, so we'll hold off until Monday. I know a lot of you have been asking me about Balthazar Garzon, having arrived in Ecuador and filing against Lenin and the Ecuadorian government for their breaches of their own constitution. I don't have much more information than has already been released publicly. I can tell you that Garzon has been representing Julian for a number of years, actually. And there is a fantastic documentary, I think it's called Hacking Justice. And that documentary showcases Garzon's work for Julian over the course of the last few years. Zanga says he wants a march in DC. Now, I know there was an awesome action, I think it was 16th and 17th of October off the top of my head, in Washington, DC. And I saw some of the first pics of that come out yesterday, and I was really impressed. They're really, really fantastic pictures. Some amazing women put that together, and it was really great to see that. And I just want to let you guys know, you don't have to wait for the official Unity for J Day to do actions or events in support of Julian or in the name of Unity for J. You are more than welcome to take any kind of action at whatever day or time suits you to do so. And I love it. I really love it when people create these little subgroups and just organize and do stuff themselves. Like, you don't need to wait for us to tell you. Honestly, you have full autonomy in this movement. Anything that you want to do, go ahead and do it. And if we, if it's a credible action, then we absolutely will support that and amplify it across all of our platforms. So I think that's really awesome. I was hoping to have Kathy Vaughan here. I know that she has been starting to put together a group to create the documentary. So I think it was 2 weeks ago we decided in WikiBees session that we were going to create a Unity for J documentary. So if any of you are interested in being a part of that, please reach out to her. She is Kathy Vogan on Discord, or at Kathy Vogan SPK, I think, on Twitter. I might have to double check that. But she's looking for people who are willing to watch all of the, 190 something videos of Unity for J content and pick out all the best bits, identify the coolest pieces, right? Just write down the timestamps. And then she's looking for people, editors, to go ahead and to make those cuts and to help her piece it together. I see a lot of people saying they're having technical problems as well. It's been happening to a number of our people. I know even our tech people have been having a lot of trouble with computers and hardware and networks and whatnot, which is kind of frustrating. Now, let me see here. I think Anne has just joined. Oh, she has too. Welcome to the stream. So I should let you know we have with us tonight, Kat Mima Elizabeth is here, Eben's here running the stream. Bjorn, one of our web developers, is here. He's been diligently working away on our new website. Yeah, thank you, Brian. That's correct. Her Twitter is at Kathy Vogan SPK. If you want to be a part of creating the Unity for J documentary, then please reach out to her and let her know that you're willing to just review footage or to edit footage or to contribute to the documentary in whatever way that you can. And Anne Garrison, journalist from the KPFA Radio and Black Agenda Report, has just joined the stream. Hi, Anne. You're muted. Hold on, let me try and unmute you. Yeah, Kathy is amazing. I totally agree. She has been a phenomenal contributor to this movement. Hayes is asking, you're unmuted now. Anne, can you say something? Oh, we can't hear you. You're going to have to reboot.
I'm going to hear.
Oh, no, I just heard that.
You did?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, that's great. There's some peculiarity about the way Zoom works on my Mac, but which means I sometimes have to reboot. But I'm glad of that. I only have a few things to offer tonight. But since I'm the first one here, you want me to go first?
Go for it.
Okay. This week, for the Black Agenda Report and several other publications, I produced an interview with my friend Benedict Kumbinyoko, who is a Congolese Swiss. She has political asylum status in Switzerland. And this was about, it's titled Congo in the Abyss. And she said, we're not on the brink of the abyss, we're there. And if you pay any attention to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, you know that this has been true for a long time. And then one of the things we talked about further was Dr. Denis Mukwege's receipt of the Nobel Prize. He just received the Nobel Peace Prize. And he's a gynecologist known as the man who heals women, because he set up a hospital in Eastern Congo to treat women who had been subjected to horrific rapes. And the doctor deserves total respect. And it possibly even makes sense for him to head a transitional government in Congo, if that can be arranged. But, well, there's a certain cynicism. Actually, I don't need to explain all of this. To cut to the chase, after we talked, I went to check WikiLeaks on Congo. And I did that also because I was going to be on Sputnik News the next day. They had asked me to come on about the Congo piece. Sputnik News Radio. And so I went looking in WikiLeaks for leaks about Congo. And I immediately found one that confirmed much of what BK and I had been talking about. So when I was on Sputnik News Radio, we talked about the breaking news about Julian. At that time, it was breaking news that these two American House reps had written this letter to Lenin Moreno. So we talked about that for about 5 minutes, and then we talked about the Congo most of the time. But at the end, we went back to Julian and I discussed this leak that WikiLeaks published, this document, and how it had confirmed everything we had just been, well, much of what we had just been talking about. So I just want to flag that for attention. It's at the top of my Twitter page. And I hope we'll see more journalists being specific about how they've cited WikiLeaks. I've done it 5 or 6 times. And I'm sure that I'll do it many more times.
So something that was really interesting to me this week was that huge New York Times scoop where they had investigated the 14 Saudi officials who had flown to Turkey to ostensibly to kill Khashoggi. And in the New York Times, like buried at the bottom of the New York Times investigation, it said this information was sourced from leaked Saudi government documents. And I talked to a few people who are in the know and said, now, what leaked Saudi government documents do you think they would be? And sure enough, that information, the New York Times had used WikiLeaks Saudi cables to verify their story. And they didn't mention, which I thought was really poor form, they did not mention in the article that those cables had been published by WikiLeaks and that WikiLeaks was the mechanism by which they were able to verify their findings of this big scoop investigation that they published. But it showed me that yet again, WikiLeaks is such an incredibly important resource, not just to all of us independent journalists, but it still is an incredibly important resource for the mainstream media, for the biggest publishers in the world, and that they are able to do what they do on the back of WikiLeaks work.
How did you know that it was a WikiLeaks cable if they didn't say that?
Because we couldn't find Saudi government documents, leaked Saudi government documents, and that included those names in the public sphere. But when you type those names, but when you go to wikileaks.org and you type those names in from that New York Times article, it brings up, it returns the results of the documents to which they're referring to in the article. So they acknowledge that they used leaked Saudi government documents, but they didn't give the provenance as being from WikiLeaks, which I thought was really poor form on their part.
Maybe they were afraid they'll be prosecuted for publishing classified materials.
I think they're more afraid that their readers would go, wow, New York Times relies on WikiLeaks documents. So, but it's, that's it.
Thank you. That's very well worth noting.
Something so relevant, such a relevant topic investigations into such a relevant topic are being directly informed by the work of WikiLeaks. And it just goes to show too that, it was years ago now, 3 years ago that the Saudi leaks were published by WikiLeaks, maybe 4 years. And it just goes to show that you don't know the importance of the information that is published until some time in the future when it becomes, when you realize its full significance. So when those documents were published about, naming those people, we didn't know the significance of those documents, but now we do. So it just goes to show. Beyond saying that New York Times doesn't reveal their sources, well.
Yeah, well, this made me remember something else. When Julian was talking to RT in that 2-part interview with RT, during which he said very quotably that all the wars of the past 50 years could have been stopped by the media if they didn't just regurgitate ruling class lies. He said in the same interview that there were big gaps in the cables, that they hadn't, at least in the diplomatic cables, released the most, they hadn't had access to the most top secret cables. And so you would be able to tell that something was missing there. Well, in the case of Rwanda, this is really extreme because there's one, it's something like 1978, and then very little until 1998, when Bill Clinton goes to spew all these lies about how he was sorry he didn't intervene in Rwanda in 1994. Well, how could there be no cables from Rwanda from, let's say, 1980, I think it was about 1980 to 1998. I'd have to check again to be absolutely precise, but the really shocking thing was that there were none from 1990 to 1994, which was when the current president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, invaded Rwanda from Uganda on October 1st, 1990. And 4 years later, in July, that was the end of the genocide, at which point he seized power. How could there be no cables from the US Embassy in Rwanda during that time?
So you think that they were classified above the access level of the WikiLeaks source?
That would be my guess.
Highly possible.
There's one other source on those. Someone, Dr. Peter Erlander, scanned a lot of paper docs into something he calls Rwanda Documents Project. So I'm going to check that for diplomatic cables. But he gained access to the paper copies.
Ah, right.
I think it was likely something like, how Robert Perry was digging around in the basement at, I think it was the State Department, and he came across all these documents that proved the October surprise.
Remarkable. And then it reminds me, in the Snowden documents, the NSA is talking about how they desperately don't want the classification levels to be changed or altered, which had been one of the findings of the 9/11 Commission, that they had wanted to change or to adapt the classification levels, and NSA was petrified of that happening. And I remember too Snowden saying that at the NSA their lunch plans were classified. They couldn't go to lunch and have that not be classified. So it's that secrecy, that obsession with secrecy.
I'd like an update on whether or not Julian will sign off on these draconian conditions that were presented.
He will not. So that's something that I've confirmed, is that he has not and will not sign any agreement to curtail his freedom of expression in any way, shape or form. That is 100% confirmed. And I think Protect What's True says that MSM exploits WikiLeaks. That is absolutely, you're exactly right. They do exploit WikiLeaks. And that's something I see in activism all the time too. And right as far back as Occupy in 2011, I would write pieces and then the mainstream media would usurp information from those, pick what suited them to print. Mm-hmm. And they would all but print it verbatim. And then on occasion, I would see headlines that I had written, like literally my headlines published in the paper. So they wouldn't interview us, they wouldn't source us, they wouldn't refer to us, they wouldn't credit us. But when it suited them, they would regurgitate our content, and blatantly so.
And this was about Occupy?
Yeah, this is through Occupy days. Now, 95%, maybe more, 97% of the time, they would just black out our content. But on the very rare occasion when it suited them to, they would just usurp our content. I mean, there were several, not even just writing in headlines. I mean, I took on New Zealand Herald because they actually literally stole a photograph I had taken and published it as their own, as if it was their own journalist that had taken the photograph, and they didn't attribute it to me or credit it to me in any way. So they really, it's ironic, but MSM truly are the worst plagiarists out there, and they have no qualms whatsoever about stealing content from activists and from independent journalists.
Someone else seems to have joined us. But
well, we have a few people here with us, but they're just not on camera.
Bjorn Danielson, I want to ask just one more question. I guess this means that because he's not going to sign the draconian conditions, he won't be reconnected. Will he have any more access? I mean, phone visitors? Will they impose these newly draconian conditions about visitors that were in the conditions, since they're the ones who can make decisions about that?
What it looks like is happening is that Ecuador aren't supplying an agreement for him to sign. They're supplying a notice, like, we are notifying you that this is the new regime. I think we've just lost Anne, but I'm sure she'll be back in a second. So it's like they're notifying him that these are the rules, right? But then they are trying to sell that as an agreement in public. They're trying to suggest in public and to the media that Julian has agreed to these terms to somehow infer some kind of responsibility on his part. So somebody else has just, Mariko has said, I keep hearing Julian is back online, but I don't see an active personal account. Where can we hear his direct voice and tweets? Thank you. So at Julian Assange is still his Twitter account. It's just that it's currently being run by his legal team. So you can still hear tweets about Julian's situation, particularly about his legal situation, on the at Julian Assange account. And of course, WikiLeaks account is running like normal, even though Julian is not around. Now, whether or not Julian has some degree of internet access back, we are not sure yet. It's possible, and it's possible that if he had internet connection again of some variety, that he wouldn't just be racing onto Twitter to tweet at everyone. He might actually be just taking some time to catch up with his family or friends, or, you know, the people that he hasn't been able to talk to for the last 7 months. I don't believe that he currently has been reconnected in any form, but I don't know. That's unconfirmed. But what is confirmed 100% is that he has not signed and will not sign any agreement that restricts his right to freedom of expression or political opinion. I'm just reading through your guys' comments. Black Cats Matter says Ecuador isn't giving Julian any choice to accept or reject these crazy protocols. That's why he is suing. It's his only recourse. Exactly right. That's when I looked through the original Spanish version of the document, I noticed there is no signature line on the document. There's no like date and signed by lines at all. So they're not even trying to get him to sign them. They are just simply notifying him that these are their terms going forward. And I think he's suing them on principle, and I'm very happy that he is suing them, because it's really important that that there is a pushback and that there is some avenue for recourse against such egregious violations of his human rights as those that we are seeing. Jefferson says they're trying to trap Julian. Yeah, well, it's pretty transparent, absolutely. I mean, many people saw that writing on the wall straight away as soon as they read these conditions. Propaganda says his mother is super powerful. Yes, Christine Assange is incredibly powerful. Her voice is incredibly powerful. And please, if you don't already, make sure that you look up at Assange Mrs. M-I-S, at Assange Mrs. and support her, because she is tweeting all day, every day. And not only just tweeting about Julian's case, but she's trying to actively support all of the different people all around the world who are taking actions and organising events to try to get Julian out of that embassy. So supporting Mrs. Assange, or Assange Mrs. as she is on Twitter, is supporting Julian in a really profound way. So make her voice as big as we possibly can. Like, I go every single day, I go to her timeline and read through it and retweet. So if you guys all did that, that would be really, really fantastic. She's also really focused on actionable information, things that we can do something about. She has hundreds of different ways that you can help Julian that can be found on her timeline on any given day. So absolutely take that advice and follow it. Mariko Phillips says Julian's personal account hasn't been used for tweets by him or legal since 2013. Mariko, that is not correct. Julian was tweeting as recently as March 28th of this year. That was the date that he was cut off, and he was tweeting from the account at Julian Assange. I think that you're referring to a historical account, an old account of Julian's that he had not been recently using, but his most recent account is simply at Julian Assange on Twitter. Is it true that he is seeking legal action against Ecuador because of new limitations? Yes, Pat, 1776 US. That is true, and you'll find information about that on at WikiLeaks timeline. One of his lawyers has landed in Ecuador and is, I believe today, was filing suit against the Ecuadorian government, particularly against Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno. Navigator says Julian's too smart to fall into their traps, and I completely agree with you. Nikki M says, I read about the legal action Julian is taking against Ecuador. Is this the first time that he's done that? They've been breaching his human rights for months. Julian has countersued all along the way. How do I put this the best? At every given opportunity throughout the years, Julian has taken legal action, not just in defense, but like offensive, like actually filing suit against people. WikiLeaks has filed suit against multiple media organizations when they've been smeared by them. And Julian, obviously, he took the actions at the legal actions at the UN, which have resulted in the two findings by the working group on arbitrary detention, that both of which found his favour. I believe there's been a number of other actions as well under international law that have been taken by Julian's team. Julian has the best legal team in the entire world for somebody who is in his situation. He has the most experienced, most qualified people working on his case, and they know his case thoroughly inside out. They've been working on it full time for 8 years plus. So generally speaking, every day I get messages from people saying, why don't we tell his legal team to do this or that or the other thing? Generally speaking, if there's a legal option, his legal team are well aware of it and on top of it. We can definitely trust them. Absolutely, we can trust them. Right, so Black Cats Matter has said, when you read the fine print at the bottom of the protocol, it says that the new rules become effective upon delivery of a copy to Julian. There is no signature page. So that's absolutely correct. So it is a notice. They are notifying him. It's not an agreement at all. Brian says, Susie, they knew that Julian would never sign, didn't they? Well, probably they did. So yeah, they're just trying to impose these conditions on him. Tina says that she hopes Julian has been allowed to get medical attention. So far, Julian has not been able to get medical attention. He has had some diagnostic work done by diagnostic in the sense of coming and assessing him, but not diagnostic in the sense of access to MRIs and other things that he needs. Julian has urgently needed dental work done for years and has not been able to access that in the embassy. He needed an MRI for his shoulder and couldn't access that. But there are all manner of different types of physical damage that comes when you are in a confined space with no access to sunlight for as many years as he has been. It degrades all of your bodily functions and your organs. Some of that damage could be irreversible, and is likely irreversible. So Julian's medical situation remains dire, but unfortunately at this time he's had no medical treatment. And this is one of the reasons why it's so urgent and why we created Unity4J, why it's so urgent that he be able to receive medical attention. Protect What's True says, it's been hard for me to show the right rage at Moreno when I also feel JA's life depends on Ecuador. I find listening to Susie and other activists on Unity4J has been helping me. For a long time, we wanted to continue to express our gratitude for the sanctuary that Ecuador did give Julian for as many years as they have. But if you follow Rafael Correa, the former president of Ecuador, who was president when Julian was given a political asylum by Ecuador, Correa's statements and tweets have been really prescient. So he has said what is going to happen with regards to Lenin, Moreno, and Julian, and then it's happened. And that's been the case time and time again. And so Correa obviously is very in the know and has the contacts and network to have a better understanding than any of us what is actually going on with Lenin Moreno. And Correa says that Moreno is a traitor to the Ecuadorian people, that he has betrayed the Ecuadorian revolution, that he is squandering all of the political and social progress that had been made in Ecuador in the previous 12 years. And he is speaking in no uncertain terms about Moreno. And I think in a week in which we've seen Ecuador even threaten Julian's cat, at this point one has to wonder how much lower they can go in their treatment of Julian. Many people believe that had worldwide solidarity actions not started up for Julian a few months ago, that Ecuador already would have turfed him out. But they were trying to create the conditions where they could turf him out. They were working in concert with these mass media smears, and they were trying to make it a fait accompli that Julian would be handed over to the UK. And they had to back down from that because it didn't work. The smears didn't work sufficiently for them to be able to do that. But that doesn't mean that they don't want to do that or that they might not do that in the future. And that's why we have to continue to grow this movement. We have to expand and increase the frequency of our solidarity actions for Julian. And we have to shield him and protect him, because we can no longer rely on Ecuador to do it for us. We can no longer rely on there being a friendly state actor in this situation, because there really isn't one anymore. Ludo says, can they strip his citizenship while there is pending litigation submitted as a citizen? I have absolutely no idea, Ludo. That would be a question for his lawyers. Zoe says, has the latest Wiki Amazon dump given any leverage to JA's freedom, or did it just make it worse, or no change? I don't know. There is like shifting sands of support for Julian based on any given release. So, for example, the ICE Patrol release recently was seen as alienating some of his conservative support, whereas the Clinton releases were seen as alienating his liberal support. And what it comes down to is that WikiLeaks is really, really are just a publisher, and they will just publish anything that is relevant that they're given. So it actually is a validation. The fact that they publish information that is inconvenient to the left and to the right is a validation that they really are just a legitimate publishing outlet and that they are not partisan, even though many people try to paint them as being one way or the other. In reality, they are not. As to whether that will help him, I have absolutely no idea. Maybe it won't. I'm sure. I mean, we know that him saving Snowden's life didn't help his position, but he still did it because it was the right thing to do. Wow, you guys, the chat's moving faster than I can keep up with it at the moment.
You know, this is something I've always wondered about. Can you hear me?
Mariko, Julian Assange _ is not Julian Assange's account. Julian Assange's account is at Julian Assange, and that's it. Sorry, go ahead, Anne.
Okay, so you can hear me?
Yes, I can.
I've always wondered why it was WikiLeaks, Julian Assange and Sarah Harrison, who had to go help Edward Snowden instead of The Intercept.
Well, The Intercept didn't exist then.
You're right. Yeah.
It literally didn't exist at that time. I don't believe that Laura was publishing anywhere at that time. I think that she was primarily just a video journalist and documentarian. Jeremy Scahill wasn't on board at that point either. None of the Intercept staff were on board at that point.
You're right. Of course.
Glenn was still writing for The Guardian, and it was the conglomerate of the Guardian, the Washington Post, New York Times, I believe, that published those initial stories. So the real question is, why didn't The Guardian help its source? And I would say that there's two answers to that. One is that Snowden himself had told the journalists that he didn't want them to be put in a situation where they could, where their publishing could be accused of being compromised by any other relationship with him. That if they were supporting him personally, that it could compromise the reporting, is what I'm trying to say. But the larger factor is, when the hell did they ever help a source? I mean, when have they ever saved the lives of a source? When has there ever been a major mainstream publication? I mean, look at, like, in being Julian Assange, I detailed years of history, public history of WikiLeaks advocating for Chelsea Manning. Financially, putting their money where their mouth was, but also they were organizing massive actions for Chelsea across multiple cities. They were doing letter writing campaigns to Obama. They were setting up legal funds and all kinds of stuff, taking myriad actions in support of Chelsea Manning. For year in and year out, I tracked over 800 tweets just between 2010 and 2013 from WikiLeaks. 800 just from WikiLeaks account. Promoting support for Chelsea Manning. When has the New York Times or any major organization tweeted 800 times to protect a source, or done all of the things that I just talked about, coordinated on the ground actions and letter writing campaigns and everything? They don't do this. And they would say that's not our business, our business is to publish. Whereas WikiLeaks, oh my God, not only did they come up with the innovation of the secure Dropbox and the whole methodology of how to receive documents, but they have they've engineered aftercare for sources that I don't think ever existed in journalism before that. Certainly not in mass audience journalism. Are you aware of any examples?
No.
Where a publisher advocates legally, financially, and socially for the benefit of a source? I'm not aware of any such case. Certainly it didn't happen for Daniel Ellsberg, did it? They might write an opinion piece once the source is in jail or being dragged before a court. They might put, you might see a Washington Post opinion piece saying, oh, well, maybe we shouldn't do anything nasty to that source. But when do they ever actually intervene on behalf of a source, like never. So that kind of aftercare is definitely, and I have seen, and this is a really problematic example because of the Intercept's role in Reality Winners situation. But we have seen Intercept create legal funds and do some things to help Reality Winner. And I would say that that's partially inspired by liability and or avoidance of liability, but it's also partially inspired by WikiLeaks and partially inspired by the lessons learned from the abandonment of Snowden in Hong Kong.
Well, Glenn Greenwald did go to where Chelsea Manning was in prison.
Glenn Greenwald is a total exception. I love Glenn. I have reasons to love Glenn. Let me just say, if you're ever detained on a border at some ungodly hour of the morning, that Glenn is the person that you would want to call. He is a good human being. He's the real deal. He's legit. I know this for a fact. He is legit and the real deal. So you're right that Glenn did advocate for sources, even when there were other people's sources. Glenn it was the driving factor too behind the Intercept fundraising. They raised $100,000, and I believe Glenn himself personally donated $10,000 or $20,000 towards Chelsea Manning's legal defence fund in the later years at the appeal stage. So, as well as having covered her case, inside out for many years prior. So I consider Glenn to be in that WikiLeaks ethos of wanting to protect, not just protect, but being willing to act, to intervene and to act to protect sources above and beyond what any establishment outlet would do. However, the Intercept has a lot of establishment outlet alumni staff who don't come from that WikiLeaks ethos, but who come from the establishment way of doing things. Is the way that I would put that. So I don't consider Glenn and the Intercept to be in the same basket at all.
That's the way I feel too. Just today, another whistleblower from the FBI was sentenced to prison, and who had he leaked to? The Intercept. And I thought, how did that happen again? I'm not accusing them of conspiracy.
Oh God, the FBI whistleblower. I know. How did that happen again? I think that's a question that needs to be asked.
Yeah.
And also, when this happens, why in the hell is it that there's not a single person? And Glenn himself said it. Glenn said, if I was a reader looking in on this happening, I would be asking myself why nobody was fired, why nobody was let go. Glenn said this. He tweeted it out. You can find it on Twitter. He actually said himself, if I was a consumer of the Intercept's product and I was watching whistleblowers end up in jail, I would be wanting to know why there were not heads on a platter.
Meaning the
Intercept journalists. Meaning where there is culpability on the part, because this is the big thing, is that, oh God, we're so far away from Left4j and WikiBase right now, but Betsy Reed investigated the situation with Reality Winners documents having been supplied to the FBI or whoever it was they supplied them to, essentially in their original form, and that led to her being jailed. And at the end of Betsy Reed's investigation, she wrote an apology letter on the Intercept and said, we're sorry that this has happened and we will try to do better. She didn't say, I'm firing the journalist who supplied the source information to the federal government. She said, I'm sorry, we shouldn't have done that and we'll do better. And this is now, the next case. Now we've got the FBI whistleblower ending up in jail after having leaked to the Intercept. And Glenn said, he openly said, if I was a reader, I would be looking at this and asking why nobody was fired.
Oh, so he was asking why is it?
Why is it business as usual? Why is it business as usual while people are going to jail and it's business as usual?
Yeah, not having any evidence that it was anything more suspicious. I can only believe that it was sloppiness, but of some sort. But this keeps happening with The Intercept. And as John Kiriakou said, he thought The Intercept cost him 3 or 4 years of his life, however many years he spent.
And it was the same journalist. The journalist that rolled over on John Kiriakou was the same journalist that supplied Reality Winners source materials to the federal government unredacted. Well, when I say unredacted, still with the fingerprints on it from the printer. Sorry, Timothy Mutton is saying, I'm in New Zealand. If I want to send, I've just lost that there, but it was something along the lines of that you're wanting to send snail mail to the government, and where should you send it to? Timothy, there is a long list of people that you can talk to in New Zealand that need to hear from you, and need to hear that you care about Julian and that you are concerned and that you want them to do something. I would say your local MP is a good start, and to party leaders, but also go after the MPs that should be speaking on his behalf and aren't, which would be pretty much the entire Green Party at this point. Gul Rees, Garaman, she would be absolutely one that would need to be spoken to. I personally think Winston Peters is someone who, in the past, he championed the wine box inquiry whistleblowers. I believe that he's definitely someone that you should be writing to about that. However, also need to write to the news editors of the major New Zealand publications who have done absolutely jack shit to cover Julian's situation. I would also be wanting to write to Amnesty New Zealand and say, hey, Amnesty Australia has released a statement about this. Why haven't you guys? How about you step up to the plate? I'd also want to talk to like Tech Liberty NZ and organisations like that and say, hey, what you guys do is like just write in, in the tech space, libertarian tech space. Why have you not got something to say about Julian and WikiLeaks? Human Rights Council of New Zealand, Law Society of New Zealand. Law Society would be a good one because they're highly likely to actually release an analysis or a statement. So that is very, very, very helpful that you're willing to do that, and that's my suggestions. I'd also say get in touch with Greenweaver Alex on Twitter and on Facebook. She is part of Free Assange NZ group, and they've been doing some amazing stuff. They're the ones who got that petition tabled at Parliament, and they've been doing other great actions. So get in contact with them and hook up with them because they are really, really good people.
There was something I wanted to go back to and just clarify regarding what we were talking about, busting sources.
I'm going to disappear off camera for a minute, but I'm here. I'm going to take these questions down into a pad, but I'm listening to you. Go for it, Anne.
Okay. What I explain to people often is that WikiLeaks has never had to retract a publication and has never busted a source. And we were talking about John Kiriakou and how he wound up, he says, in prison for some years because The Intercept got him busted. And he said that the only really safe place to leak was to WikiLeaks.
Yeah, he's reiterated that several times on our vigils as well and said exactly the same thing. And I completely agree as well. Navigator Anne saying she's a little bit iffy about the Intercept. She wants to know, aren't they connected to Amazon? The connection there, Navigator Anne, is through the parent company First Look Media being owned by Pierre Omidyar, who is on the board of PayPal, one of the PayPal co-founders.
Yes, I've wondered about that, given that PayPal was one of the first to try to strangle WikiLeaks financially.
Yeah, it's a whole other conversation. But I would, in my personal opinion, Glenn was he was in a really hot situation in Brazil holding those documents, and he was his primary consideration was to make sure that they were published and to find a way for them to be published, and knew that he couldn't rely on the mainstream outlets to do it. And when Pierre Omidyar surfaced and introduced to Glenn and told him that he thought what Snowden had done was wonderful and important, that these documents should be published, I think that Glenn took the only option at hand that was going to guarantee that he had the resources necessary to publish the documents and get them as distributed as far and wide to the public as he possibly could. And so I actually totally understand that situation. I think had Glenn not had those resources and not had that ability, who knows, that we even would have had any of that publishing. Protect What Truth says that JA's love for whistleblowers and devotion to their safety is one of the most beautiful things in the world. I completely agree with that. That's where you see Julian's empathy always comes into play, empathy and solidarity. And that's what, the mainstream should be talking about, not his cat.
His cat, yeah.
Navigator Anne, you are absolutely correct that even Mother Jones has gone to the dogs, quite frankly.
Oh, yeah, I saw Julian speaking about that in Berkeley a number of years ago. Julian was speaking at the Graduate School of Journalism, and someone brought up this article in Mother Jones in which someone had said that he had indicated bias because instead of just publishing leaks, he was writing introductions to them. And
that's nonsense.
Yeah, it was total nonsense. And he said, look, all the data that I referred to in these introductions is there. If anybody wants to prove that I said something that was wrong in the introductions, the data is all there. I'm giving it to you.
And in this day and age, you have to have some press statement go out with it, because reporters are getting paid $50 a blog post, on these publications. They want the work to be done for them so that they can regurgitate it. It's just a fact of life. Somebody has just scrolled off my screen because chat's moving quite quickly. Somebody just said that Unity for J should write a thank you letter to Garzon for his principled support of Julian and the actions that he's taking. I completely agree with you. If you go to unityforj.com/discord and join and go to the role channel and assign yourself to the comms team, draft a thank you letter and post it in there, and we absolutely will proof it and publish it. I think that would be a lovely thing to do. Navigator Anne's asking why Omidyar hasn't slapped Greenwald on the hand for standing up for Assange. I don't think that anybody in the world could slap Glenn for that. Glenn would tell them where to jump.
I agree.
It was Cliff Wallace who was asking about the thank you letter. Cliff, if you would draft a thank you letter and post it to the comms channel, absolutely we'll do that. Thank you so much. Timothy, I'm glad that you stuck around and heard what I was saying about who you should write to in New Zealand. Thank you for that as well.
I'm trying to figure out how to see the chat.
I can give you the restream.
Oh, I got it now. I got it now.
There's a number of different chats, but the restream chat compiles them all together.
Okay.
RSFO says that Omidyar couldn't slap his most important employee at The Intercept openly. Well, Glenn has said that a condition of his contract with Omidyar about the establishment of The Intercept was that they would have total editorial independence. And I believe that Glenn considers that to be very precious and absolutely would enforce that.
Well, I'm not sure if this is relevant to WikiLeaks, but just briefly, I think this is worth knowing, since I've done a lot of research on the ideological infrastructure of humanitarian intervention. At one point, I learned that Pierre Omidyar and his, Humanity United charity had contributed financially to the Mass Atrocity Response Operations book, which is a handbook it's a handbook for military intervention. And, you know, and it begins with these citations about Yugoslavia and Rwanda and how we have to accept our responsibility. Samantha Power was very much behind it.
Yeah, I've read the doctrine that you're talking about, the US Army doctrine, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's an incredibly significant document. Elizabeth is asking, why didn't Glenn give the Snowden documents to WikiLeaks? Well, Glenn had a contractual obligation and had received funds in order to establish an organization to publish them. But Glenn also had agreements with Snowden. He had commitments and responsibilities to his source. And Snowden had said from the outset that there were a set of conditions under which he was supplying the documents. And Glenn, to his credit, has stayed true to those conditions to this day. Also, something that has gone really under the radar, which I talk about in my article, Being Julian Assange. If you haven't read it, you might want to. It was recently republished by Consortium News. Be warned, it's 23,000 words, so it will take some time to get through. But one of the revelations that I made in that article is I proved that WikiLeaks had actually been behind the research on a number of the Snowden documents. The work that was done by Jacob Appelbaum relating to the Angela Merkel stories, amongst others. Jacob says himself, and I quote him in the article, that it was WikiLeaks resources and researchers that were behind those stories. Those major, they won awards for those stories as well. That it was WikiLeaks all along that was behind that, but that WikiLeaks had opted not to be bylined and not to be recognised in print for it. So WikiLeaks did a tremendous amount of work, and Julian himself said that he set up EdwardSnowden.com when he was helping Snowden. EdwardSnowden.com is, in my opinion, the #1 resource for documentation about the Snowden files. If you go to EdwardSnowden.com, you'll find a document search function. That is, I can tell you personally from having used both services, it is superior to the search functions on the Intercept site. So you can read the Snowden documents on the Intercept site, or you can go to EdwardSnowden.com. Searching by keyword on those documents reveals much more than you've ever heard out of the mainstream media about the Snowden documents. Zoe's asking if we've already discussed the latest letters from the US reps to Ecuador to step up extradition. We discussed that on Wednesday's stream, Zoe. If you go back, we actually have drafted a press release that covers that and several other issues as well. Pat 1776 US says that they don't trust the Intercept due to tracing back the funders. I actually am not, I don't like the whole guilt by association thing. I actually think it's insufficient to say, oh, because Pierre Omidyar is a billionaire and involved with US aid and other really alarming things like that, that therefore all of the work that the Intercept does lacks credibility or can't be relied on. The truth is somewhere in the middle. The truth is it's not one way or the other. It's not that the Intercept is totally trustworthy or that they're totally untrustworthy. There is some very good, very reliable and very valuable publishing that has been done by the Intercept, and there is also a bunch of what I would consider to be crap, junk, in fact, and increasingly so. The period of time when Glenn, Laura and Jeremy were editing the Intercept was, at that time, I would log on and read everything that was published on the Intercept every single day, and it was 100% legit and useful. As they stepped back and used the budget for what it was intended to do, which was to hire professional editors, and they appointed Betsy Reed and Charlotte Greensitt and people like this, the quality, in my opinion, of the Intercept began to go downhill. And with each passing year, we see more establishment pro-NatSec voices coming on board, and the quality of the content degrades. But I don't think that is solely attributable to the fact that Pierre was the funder at all. Now, I've written extensively about how the Billionaires Club and about how if you're a billionaire and you don't do what the government likes or wants, you will very quickly not become a billionaire anymore. Billionaires are hand-selected by those who are in power, and Kim.com is a fantastic example of this. Kim made a couple $100 million, had created something which I believe 4% of the global internet traffic was running through mega upload servers. And what did they do to him? They didn't like him. They didn't want him to become a billionaire. So all of a sudden there are sealed indictments at the Eastern District Court of Virginia. There is FBI raids on his house. There are his funds being frozen and his family being attacked. And this will happen to any billionaire that steps out of line. So if you want to remain a billionaire, you have to submit to power, or you will very quickly lose your status and your resources. So I think the fact that Pierre is able to be Pierre means that at certain levels he is playing the game with what is expected of him. But that is not what Glenn is. And that is not what Jeremy or Laura are. So you have to be able to see, I mean, they say like 2 degrees of separation. All of us could be connected to somebody, that could be considered to be guilty by association to somebody, whether or not we even have anything to do with them whatsoever. So just be aware of that. It's too easy to just say, because Pierre has these terrible connections and is involved with dodgy things, that therefore you should write off the entire network. You absolutely shouldn't. And I'm quite unimpressed. Actually, since we're on the topic, there is a certain outlet that has been pushing that line for a couple of years now, that we shouldn't trust the Intercept and that the Intercepts are bad because of Pierre, et cetera, et cetera. That same outlet is now pushing the line that Snowden is violating BDS by agreeing to speak in Israel. Was it later this month or sometime in November? That is another ignorant piece of publishing by that outlet, extremely ignorant piece of publishing by that outlet. Because first of all, Snowden and Glenn in particular have voraciously supported BDS for years. And the BDS boycott is like Lorde, the New Zealand singer. She chose to cancel her appearances in Israel because she doesn't want to be seen to be showing up there pretending everything's totally fine and let's have a concert and a great time when Palestinian people are being basically genocided right in front of the world's nose and nobody appears to be doing much about it. That is an example of a situation where a boycott is appropriate. But what does Snowden do? When Snowden is going to speak in, well, not going, but digitally going to speak in Israel, he's not going there to give a concert and pretend that everything's fine and good. He's going there to do the same thing that he's done for every other country that he's spoken in, which is to talk about that country's government's complicity in mass surveillance, to talk about that government's complicity in crimes against people. And so I think it is entirely appropriate for Ed to be speaking in Israel. So I know this from experience in New Zealand with the Snowden NZ releases and with Snowden speaking at the Moment of Truth event in Auckland. He didn't come to New Zealand to pretend everything was fine. I just keep saying came to, but you guys know what I mean. He didn't appear in New Zealand to pretend everything was fine. He appeared in New Zealand to prove that there were US military bases functioning on New Zealand soil that New Zealand citizens had no idea even existed, to provide documentary evidence that the New Zealand government was involved in mass surveillance of its own citizens and of other Pacific nations. He was there to deliver the truth to the everyday citizens, and that is precisely what he will do in Israel. In Israel, he will be talking about the Israeli government's complicity in mass spying, in war crimes, in what the Five Eyes calls the global network, which we know the Two Eyes is US and Israel. Israel have even greater complicity and access to information in the global network than New Zealand, Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. So I think it is incredibly important for Snowden to speak in Israel to Israeli citizens, because he is doing so to educate them about the crimes of their government. So I think that the BDS argument does not apply in that situation, and I'm actually really unimpressed with the particular journalist and outlet who are currently trying to rile up the BDS movement to be anti-Snowden because he's speaking in Israel. I think that it's ignorant. It's extremely ignorant that they are refusing to acknowledge the content and the motivation and the reasons why Snowden is appearing in Israel, and that his appearance is actually inconvenient to the Israeli government. It's actually potentially damaging to the Israeli government, who do not want their citizens to know the extent to which they're complicit in these crimes. So that's my little lecture about that. I've been considering writing something up about it, actually, because I've been very unimpressed to watch this specific journalist and outlet reaching out to very credible independent journalists and credible activists, trying to convince them that Snowden is betraying them, when quite the opposite is true. And that being the same journalist and outlet that have been relentlessly attacking Glenn Greenwald personally and Snowden for a number of years.
I think I know who you're talking about, even though you're not naming them. They're very hard on Norman Finkelstein, too.
Really? That I didn't know.
Well, Norman Finkelstein does not support BDS.
Why is that?
Well, you should watch what he says about it in an interview with the Real News Network.
I personally absolutely support BDS, because this is exactly the same tactic that was successfully employed against the apartheid regime in South Africa. I think it has a historical precedent of being a successful tactic. And I think that some of the work, like I remember the Block the Boat crew from Oakland, Ports of Oakland and San Francisco.
Oh yeah, I was part of that. That was great.
Amazing. That stuff was amazing. We were cheering that on from New Zealand. I am completely 100% in support of the BDS movement, but to see the BDS movement being deceived into believing that Snowden is somehow violating them when he is going to be speaking about Israeli government crimes, I think is pathetic. It's pathetic, and I don't like to see activists being manipulated in that way.
Well, just because Norman Finkelstein has this disagreement with the publication that I'm pretty sure you're talking about, or with BDS activists, he broke so much ground that I'm not going to dismiss him over that.
Kat Gandhi is saying that the journalist also went after Vanessa Bailey and Eva Bartlett. That's actually not the journalist. It's not the journalist I'm talking about, Kat Gandhi, though. The person I am talking about was working with that person who you were talking about. Look, it's just this is a really good rule of thumb, actually, in my experience. Like, when I write about power, I write about the intelligence agencies, I write about the governments. I don't write about some, activist shouldn't be supported or don't support this whistleblower or this whatever else. I write about power. So people who are the opposite, people who consider activism to be critiquing other activists, you got to ask some questions there, really. You have to ask some questions. Why is that a priority for them as the world is falling apart? Why is it a priority for them to be damaging the relationships and reputations of other activists and whistleblowers? Tina, nothing has happened at all with disobedient media. Disobedient media, in my opinion, are absolutely fantastic. I'm not at all referring to them whatsoever. Cliff, absolutely. Look, Cliff, we have a whole team of really incredible proofreaders and editors and stuff. So you just put together your thoughts into a document, notepad, whatever you want to put it into, and stick it in there, and people will rework it and turn it into something really professional and fantastic. But it was your idea, so absolutely, I think, put some words on a page and submit it to the comms team, and let's do it. Thank you, Protect What's True. Protect What's True. Nobody can study the Snowden documents, and I don't mean study what the New York Times says about Snowden documents or whoever. No one can study the content of the Snowden documents and then credibly tell me that Snowden is a plant, because the contents of the document are so significant that it's absolutely impossible that, you know, that the government is in any way benefited by it. Propaganda, I totally agree with you. Let's focus on saving Julian. I'm breaking rule number 1. Oh my God, that's classic. Well, technically that's rule number 1 on the Discord server. I agree with you. So, I think the bulk of the work that has to be done over the next week is surrounding the next vigil and the next Unity for J Day. I think we can wrap up and get that press release out on Monday morning. I did want to have Bjorn talk to us a little bit about the status of where the website is at and what he needs from us now in order to progress that. Bjorn, are you ready to do that?
Sure.
Cool. So the last time Bjorn was on, he screen shared and took us through the new design for the new unityforj.com site. And we talked quite extensively about all the different components, what the functionality that we wanted the site to have. And then we decided that we would release a 1.0 version, which would simply put a new face on the current functionality that our existing site has, and then that would stage the release of the new functionality beyond that. So Bjorn, where are we at?
Okay, I can give you a peek here. So if you can see that everything is sideways on the screen there. So the last time I was on, I was working on, I don't know if I said it then, but we're setting up Tor access. I don't think I mentioned it then.
No, I don't think people realize that there is actually going to be, that there is a Tor Onion service.
No, well, the thing is that as soon as I mentioned that, some strange things started to happen, and I don't know if it was just me or what it was, but I'm in the process of reinstalling everything on my computer. So I don't know if anybody has seen me tilting my head sideways now during the session, but
I did.
Yeah, you did. Probably looked kind of strange, but that's the reason I'm reinstalling the computer. No, we made some progress, but not as much as we'd like. And isn't it typical that when somebody really needs to get some action done or protest or yeah, they are usually the ones with the least resources. I mean, everyone in the Unity for J movement we have families, we have lives, and we have work, and whatever we do for Unity for J is extra work on top of everything else. So, so it's been taking a little bit of time, but we're working on it. And one of the things we tried out was Tor access, and we set up a really nice onion address for it. As mentioned, as soon as I mentioned the address online, since then I haven't been able to use those keys. So I think we have to ditch that address and use another one. So, but the good thing about it's not very difficult to set up Tor access to the website once it's up. The things that is useful about it is, of course, that people can access the site without being surveyed or nobody can see that they're actually accessing the site. And as long as that site is not, or is preferably not on the same server as the real site, it's more difficult to correlate the traffic as well. So I don't know if people, some places are reluctant to visit the Unity4J site because they may be monitored and stuff. You know how it is with the WikiLeaks site. It's not popular for officials, at least in the US, to visit WikiLeaks. So we want to make it as accessible as possible for people who might not be allowed to visit and check out what we have. So we tried it out and it worked, and then something weird happened, and I just as a precaution reinstalled everything. And well, we have all the code and so yeah. If I'm going to say some more about it.
What are the next steps? Oh, my video's cropped out. What are the next steps going, and what do you need from us? Like you were saying today that you need content. You have the about content, right? And the contact content and the press statements, etc. What content in particular are you looking for?
Well, the last thing I was doing was gathering all the front page images for the vigils and WikiBee sessions and so on, because at least on the Tor site, we don't want to embed YouTube videos and stuff in the site when you access from Tor, because then we just pass along everything. So we need to have the ability to just show a preview image of all the content. And I think, I don't know if I showed it online last time, but we also made previews of the documents and so on. So what I'm doing now is I'm gathering all the images we have for the things that have been done before, and sorting it and organizing it and so on. But once we have the graphics, we'll need people to add information about the events that have been in the past, and fill in who the participants were and from when to when they were joining and so on. So there's a lot of content but most of that we can just add as we go along. So we'll just start with a as basic as possible version.
Cool. So, like from my perspective, I'm really just looking to see that 1.0 rolled out of the existing stuff. But this is really like the 1.1 that you're talking about, right? Where we're going to have the videos and the graphics, like the historic, the archives.
I think the difference will be big enough that we can call it 2.0. But what I was thinking is, if there are any web developers like doing PHP and JavaScript and so on who might want to contribute, feel free to join Discord and say hi.
Yeah, look, I think it's time.
Would be great.
I think I need to have a bit of a pep talk here, because it's really abundantly clear to me, guys, that there are a number of people in this movement that are really self-starters that have taken over championing specific areas of the movement. So we've got Mackenzie and Comms, who's just been absolutely amazing. We've got I call him B1 because I can never pronounce this whole word, this whole user handle, who is really amazing with doing all the proofing, like really high standard proofing. And I mean, there's too many to mention, but Bjorn is definitely one in terms of the web team and building a new website, but it is too much work. I mean, we have hundreds of videos that need to be uploaded, hundreds of graphics that need to be uploaded, an absolute ton of work that needs to be done. Kitty's another one, Kitty Handle with research. Like, if you don't know how to support this movement, support the people who are making the movement happen. So get into the Discord and say, hi, I want to help someone. I want to help out, and make friends with these people. Bjorn is Eschatus, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's at ESHATUS. ESCHATUS. Or ES Chatus. I don't know how am I supposed to say it. But, get on it. DM
it's a funny word.
Message him and say, how can I help you today? It might be something as simple as downloading YouTube videos from the YouTube channel that needs to be uploaded to the new site. It might be as simple as sitting there and going through the All Platforms channel and aggregating all of the graphics and memes into a single folder, for him. It might be, God, I'm sure he can find things for you to do, till the end of time. So please get on and support these people, because we are really lucky. Every single person has been donating their time, their resources to build this movement.
I really love in the Discord channel that when people arrive, like every day there are new people arriving and saying, hi, I want help. What can I do? And it's really amazing to see that people are appearing all the time and they want to help out. And I think the message is spreading. It's definitely spreading. But
there are so many new faces talking right now in the chat. Like there's probably 50% of the people I recognize and 50% of them I don't. They're new people who have been attracted to this effort and are willing to contribute. And that's an amazing thing. Watching this grow is really beautiful and really satisfying. I've just had 2 people in chat talking about Tor. We had someone just saying that Tor is 50% sponsored by the USA military. Paul says that. And
it was actually originally developed by the US military.
Robert says Tor was developed by US Naval Intelligence and the World Wide Web by defense contractors. So this is something I've done quite a bit of writing about in long form. There's some information about this in Being Julian Assange, and there's some in an article that I wrote about the Tor project actually when I was in Berlin a couple of years ago. So I'm pretty well versed on this stuff, having worked alongside Tor developers and being a part of that crowd. I can give you some pretty good insight into it. So the first thing is that when used correctly and implemented correctly, Tor does work. And the reason that you can know that for a fact is because the US military uses Tor. They didn't just design Tor, they didn't just fund Tor, they use Tor. So when you go back and listen to Chelsea Manning's testimony from her court-martial, she actually refers to having used Tor when she was targeting people in Iraq. Tor is technology that is used to mask the network connections of US defense agencies and subcontractors when they target and kill people. Tor is a part of the drone infrastructure. If you go and search on Twitter at Susie3D Tor drone, you will find tweets and threads from me about this, which may be useful to you. Or even at Susie3D Tor, you'll find tons of information in me talking about this. Tor is depended upon and relied on by the military. So there are definitely ethical considerations around that. However, it is also something that we can use for some degree of improved privacy. And I say some degree because when we're using Tor on hardware that can be exploited at BIOS level or by other myriad other means, then it may be that Tor itself is not entirely useful to us. And we know from the Snowden documents a number of ways in which Tor is penetrated. Another concern that people have is that there was also proof in the Snowden files that Tor users were being targeted for being Tor users. We also know that there was some projects involving, I can't remember the university off the top of my head, but I've written about it, where they were actually paid $1 million to one of the major universities to run a project specifically to unmask Tor users. What you need to remember when we're having this conversation is that if they aren't targeting you for being a Tor user, you are targeted by default because that's what mass surveillance is. Mass surveillance is them targeting the entire civilian population and storing their data in perpetuity. So you being targeted for being a Tor user is because they are concerned that the data that they're scooping up from you is encrypted and that they may not be able to break it. So when you are using properly secured end-to-end encrypted communications, they're still getting your packets from mass surveillance. It's just that they can't read the data that's in those packets, and they're storing encrypted packets instead of storing the clear text. So you are not anymore in trouble or your privacy violated by using Tor and being targeted for being a Tor user than you are by being a layperson using unencrypted communications. So this is something that everybody has to understand, is we are all targets. Every person on this planet is a target. Every person on this planet, every ISP, every network, every machine, they are collecting off all of us. That's what the Snowden revelations proved. It's what some people, including Julian Assange, had long suspected, but it's what Snowden proved. So you're correct that that Tor comes from the US military, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't trust Tor because it comes from the US military, or that you're any safer by not using Tor because it comes from the US military. You're simply not safe. That's a fact.
There are some very bright people that have been working on Tor since that time, and also the reason why we're setting up a hidden service for the Tor users is that if you're using Tor to access a regular site, you go through a few hops and then you connect to the site, and everything between the exit point and the site you're communicating with is in the open or through SSL, but it can be seen. So by accessing a hidden service site, all the communication is done inside Tor. You don't exit. And one of the problems is that intelligence organizations set up these their own exit points and try to pick up whatever comes out of them. But if your communication is done all inside Tor, you're more safe. But you can never be perfectly safe.
Tina says we're all in this fishbowl together, and you're completely right, Tina. You are completely right. Protect What's True says, is there a software we can use to secure our computers, or would it defeat the purpose to reveal it on an open platform like this? The best tools that are available in terms of operating systems are Qubes with a Q, Qubes, and Subgraph OS, and some people who I won't define in a single class like to use Linux Kali for various purposes. That is the best that's commonly available in terms of operating systems. In terms of hardware, basically all of the hardware is pwned, all of it. You get to choose whether you want to be pwned by the Chinese or the Americans. So, well, this is just a fact. You can choose to buy Chinese hardware and have your hardware be exploitable by the Chinese, or you can choose to use American hardware and have it be exploited by the global network, as they call themselves in the Snowden documents.
But wait, some of your hardware is likely to come from different places, isn't it?
Well, look, there's exactly one person I've known in my entire life who was able to create a secure mobile phone, and they had to literally build it. And that was Jacob Applebaum. So Jake had a cell phone he called the crypto phone, and it was a custom build from bottom to top. If you are someone who is able to literally build yourself components and make it into a device that works, then you may have a chance at getting a better outcome. But 99.999% of us are going to have to buy our chips from established hardware suppliers and our components, and then they're not going to be very safe. However, there are a bunch of modifications that you can do to your devices which improve things. For example, if you go and watch Snowden's interview with the head of Vice, news. And he talks about he actually he demonstrates on screen the modifications that he makes to his cell phone so that he's able to use the cell phone if he needs to. You know, in theory, he could use the cell phone. Things like he removes all of the microphones from them and then has like a separate headset only so that it can't pick up any sound unless he's actively wanting it to pick up sound. There's all types of things that you can do if you are a legit hacker and know what you're doing. But for most of us, the best that we can use is end-to-end encrypted tools and then hope that our devices aren't being penetrated at hardware level or by operating system if you're using a shitty Mac like me.
Well, I just want to say thanks because all of that information I needed, particularly the stuff about Tor. People have been saying to me, no, I don't want to use Tor. It was created by the Defense Department, et cetera, et cetera.
Tor is it's a really double-edged sword. I see it as being a double-edged sword. Someone said before, everybody needs to use Tor because the more people that use Tor, the safer we are. And because this is the principle of Tor, is that the more people that are on the network, the more cover that they provide to the other people who are on the network. Well, the counter argument to that would be if nobody except the US government used Tor, the US government wouldn't be able to use Tor because their traffic would be identifiable by those means. We would know, foreign governments would know that traffic, that encrypted network traffic, must belong to a drone, an army base, a whatever, or law enforcement who also use it, et cetera, et cetera. So in some ways, us using the Tor network adds layers of protection to the what I would consider to be malicious actors using the Tor network. Though I'm sure they don't see it that way, I certainly do. So there's that side of the coin, but then the other side of the coin is that Tor has saved people's lives. Like I haven't talked much about my experiences in Kazakhstan, and one day maybe I will, but I can tell you that there's been at least one time in my life where competently using Tor tails saved my ass. Absolutely saved my ass. And I would not be the only activist to say that. So you really have to decide for yourself in your own circumstances and your own, as they say, threat model, whether you want to use it or whether you're okay with using it. Now, obviously, there's like, 3 or 4 million users of Tor now, so we're past the point of being able to say, oh, just don't use Tor and then it will inconvenience the US military. But I'm still aware of that. I don't like the idea of using something that helps to hide drone traffic. But at the same time, I understand that it might also help to hide an at-risk activist or journalist. And also, one thing that I always try to tell people, just a piece of advice from experience, is use of Tor should be situational. You should be aware of where you are and who else is likely to be using Tor. For example, when I was in Malaysia, my use of my encryption of my data was like a shining red beacon on top of my head, because I was in an area where nobody was encrypting their traffic except me, which means that at ISP level and locally, it's like I'm shining a light on me going, hey, look at me, I must be up to something because I'm encrypting all my stuff. Whereas if I wasn't encrypting it, actually, it might just slip under the radar because I would just be like, my data would appear like everybody else's data. So you just got to be aware of that. And then if you're not encrypting it, what keywords are you using? Because the monitoring programs that they have will select your data as being interesting to them based on the contents. So are you, like in New Zealand? In New Zealand, I was writing one of my blog posts, and I was writing like weapons dealer, arms dealer. I was like something arms dealer, and as soon as I write arms dealer, boom, there goes this the screen blink, and the remote connection is established to my computer, and then they're actually watching you in real time. So your use of language, your physical location, these are all factors in whether you'll be monitored and by what means. Whereas in Berlin, I could use Tor and just like friend everybody's using Tor, like everybody. So my data just blends in with everybody else's. But in Malaysia, where like no one was using it, and KL, like it's really just saying, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me to the powers that be.
I think what's said about the threat level is very important, because I've seen some discussion online, like on Twitter and so on, that people want to be as anonymous as possible, and we live in a lot of different countries. I live in Norway, and I feel pretty safe here. You never know, but if you're going to try to be anonymous, that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of skill. So I'm thinking that maybe we should put out some information on the Unity4J site or in the Discord about how you can protect yourself. I'm sure we have some people who can put together some useful hints for those who are worried of what can happen if somebody sees what they do. I've chosen to use my full name because I really don't have time. And about time, we're racing against the clock here on so many levels. One is the fact that Julian is locked up, or he's stuck there, and those who are doing all this to him, they are waiting for him to break, and they're doing everything they can to make that happen. And like what happened with Ecuador now, they come out and say that, oh, they're gonna restore his access to the internet and let people see him and so on. And then it turns out it didn't happen, and all these things drag out time. Now, I think the reason they came out with that thing in the first place is that they saw that this movement and all the other reactions were growing. So they had to do something to make it look like, yeah, things are improving, something's happening. But Julian's situation is just one of the problems we're facing.
I gotta sign out. My doorbell rang. I'm going somewhere. Been great to be with all of you.
Thank you so much for being here, and your commitment is amazing. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's a really important point that you were just making. Go on.
Yeah, and I noticed, was it Jimmy Dore? Yeah, the interview. Who was he interviewing?
Chris Hedges.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah, but there are some really good points there about how the people who are threatening Julian are the same people who are threatening the climate and the
planet.
The planet and the social structures, and these people cause a lot of problems, and so we have to pick a level on how anonymous we feel we need to be, and how big the need is to shout out and make ourselves heard. But that's for everyone to decide for themselves. Who came on here?
That threat model changes over time. Like my threat model has fluctuated depending on my physical location, my circumstances, what stories I'm working on. So there have been there are times when I'm writing an article where I feel the heat come on. It's usually close to publishing time, and you know, the attacks ramp up, and I feel the increase, you know. Same in activism too. Depending on what you're working on at any given time, your threat model fluctuates. But you need to make smart decisions for yourself. If you are a lay person who doesn't know much about this but is really fascinated in it, there are really basic, awesome services that you can go and read online, resources that you can read. There is Security in a Box, right? securityinabox.org. is one of those educational sites. So just look up security in a box in a web browser, and you'll find the site. The Transparency Toolkit is another one. I would look up the Transparency Toolkit. There are myriad projects like this that exist just to explain to people what is off-the-record chat, what is Tor, what are the different things that you can use, what purposes should use them for, etc., etc. So if you want to educate yourself, there is a ton of information out there to do so. Hi, Simon. Simon Floth has just joined the stream because he's got some things that he wanted to talk to us about as well. So take the floor.
Okay. Hi. Now, Susie, you've just disappeared, but I was going to ask for your help for a second.
I'm right here with you. Go ahead.
Sure. I've got a link that I would like to have people be able to see, as in copy and paste. So could I just send that to you by chat, and could you make it visible somewhere that people could copy and paste it? Maybe on the chat stream or something, because I just can't access that YouTube chat stream.
Okay, so Eben, can you pass the Restream link to Simon, please, so that he can see the YouTube chat? And what? Sorry, are you going to screen share something, or what are you doing?
It's probably not that great screen share, but because it goes into details, it refers to the document that Ecuador's just put out with the protocols on Assange, and I'll just speak briefly about it, but I want people to be able to follow it up so they can look at the details for themselves, because that's where all the action is with legal stuff, unfortunately.
Cool, go for it.
Okay, so what's happened here? I've got a link. I'm going to follow the link.
If you want to drop me the link in Discord, I can pass it to social media admins to pump out in social, if you're wanting everyone to see the link.
We can do that as well. I'm just bad at multitasking when it comes to lots of windows and things like that, and I'm on camera. But I'll do that very shortly. Okay, waiting for new messages. So wait to this. Something's come up with the Restream, but I can't see intuitively how to use it. It says ready and waiting for new messages.
Yeah, you just give it a second, because it won't give you this. You won't be able to see all the prior messages, but you'll be able to see anything that's said going forward.
I see, but I don't see where to publish one.
Ah, right. Sorry, it's for reading. It's not for talking.
Okay, I can send one to you here, or to Ebon, or to anybody.
Yeah, send it to Eben. That would be cool, and Eben can pass it on to the social media team.
Okie dokie. But can it go live somehow while we're talking to the people who are watching the stream, like in the chat?
Yeah, if you pass it to Evan, he'll give it to social media, and they are modding all of this YouTube channels and everything.
Excellent. Okay, here it goes. He's got it. And I might. No, it's going to be too hard. Okay, so what this is about is the current protocols that Ecuador has just dumped on Assange include reference to a medical regime. Basically, he needs to have. There's a new situation where every 3 months he has to have a checkup, and Mike Head, who has just written an article with the World Socialist website, which is an excellent article. The link that I've just sent out there, that should be appearing soon on the chat, includes a link to that. And I'm just going to quote from it now. He says, Assange, whose health has been severely compromised by being trapped inside the tiny embassy for 6 years, would have to submit to a compulsory quarterly medical evaluation.
Okay, slow down. Whenever you're reading something, this is something I've had to learn the hard way, and I'm probably still not very good at. Whenever you're reading and you need people to absorb it, really slow the pace right down.
Okay.
So take it from the top.
No worries. Thanks for the feedback, Sis. Assange, whose health has been severely compromised by being trapped inside the tiny embassy for 6 years, would have to submit to a compulsory quarterly medical evaluations that could provide the pretext for forced medical evacuation. Now, this was something that I'd had in the back of my mind, actually mentioned when we had the first emergency vigil, when Assange's communications were cut off. I had the impression that what was going to happen ultimately would be that Moreno would take the strategy, if he was actually going to kick him out, of trying to do it on some humanitarian pretext, like saying that, well, the conditions in the embassies just aren't, we can't provide what he needs for his human rights, for the sunshine, for the fresh air, the exercise, all that sort of stuff. And so it was going to be put as a compassionate act in some sense, just to sell it, just pass it off, just a trick. But of course, if it comes to something like a medical emergency of some kind, which could, it's not the kind of thing that you would think beyond the capacity of intelligence agencies to cook up things like this, use drugs, etc. Yeah, so that had me concerned, and particularly these concerns were triggered on reading the document, because it seems to be very pedantic in a lot of ways that don't actually seem to make much sense or have much point without these sort of perspectives being relevant. Anyway, that's the way it struck me. So I've looked at the document, the relevant sections, and I've just commented on in light of this particular consideration, how the document could be easily read as a way of legitimating this type of action, and in a sense preparing the stage for this kind of action. So the link there also includes a link to the document, the protocols, and I have to say Unity for J has done a fantastic job of just being on top of things by providing English translation of those documents, of that document, and a heck of a lot better than anything that Google's got out there. And so you can actually start to do this kind of thing. You can actually dig into the details and get to the nub of what's going on and say something about it. And the reason why I think this is important to do now is because if this is the way they're thinking, and this is something they might want to at least have up their sleeve to pull out at some point, then I think it's very important that the more that's said about it in advance, the less likely it is to happen, because they lose the element of surprise, and they also come under more scrutiny. If people are paying attention on this sort of thing, then of course whoever's going to perpetrate it is unlikely to be so keen to pull it off. So that's about it, really. Maybe I can. Unfortunately, the actual, it's hard for me to sit here and start talking about particular sections and quoting and pulling it all out and laying it all out. So that's what the document does, and that's why if I was a tweeter, of course, I would just put the tweet out. But unfortunately, I'm not a tweeter. I'm a philosopher. I don't get out in public all that much with political stuff. I'm supporting Assange because I have some history relevant, and I think it's very important. And so this is the awkward way I've kind of done this today. But I will mention a couple of things. The tone in particular, there's a whole section of about, what was it, seven or eight of the total 31 points of protocol that are listed have to do with medical care. And it's written as if it's admonishing a delinquent, right? Like he's got to have his checkups. He doesn't have his checkups. He's violating the conditions as an asylee of this protocol, and there's a threat of expulsion. It's explicit threat of expulsion in this document. So that in itself, admonishing a delinquent, taking that tone itself sets an informal pretext for intervention. So that's a worry. That the section also exempts medics from the scrutiny, from the security regime, and allows exceptions in the case of emergency to a particular rule, which otherwise applies, that they have to be on a list supplied by Assange. So it's possible that while everybody else, any other kind of visitor, has to give them the phone, right? I can't remember all the onerous things they had to give. 3 days notice, they have to write a statement or something. Medics don't have to do that. They can go straight in. And of course, that's great. That's common sense, but depends what they're going in there to do, obviously. The rest of what I have to say, unfortunately, relies too much on quotation and close analysis to really just chat about. So that's all that I wanted to.
So what are you wanting us to do? What are you wanting us to do?
If people can see that link, that will probably be enough attention. If maybe somebody would tweet it, that would probably be enough, and just comment analysis of the possibility of eviction on medical pretext.
Okay, now I did get back some info from someone in the know about that concern, and this is what they said to me. Hi Susie, there has always been an emergency medical protocol in place in the embassy, literally since the 20th of June 2012, which is when Julian entered. I don't think this is new. Neither is JA paying for his own food. Neither is JA looking after his cat. These clauses, I think, are in there simply to give the impression of a difficult guest to play into the media narratives, basically. Fidel Narvaez's article today gives a good account of how things have really been over the years. What's new are the total ban on expressing opinions, in contravention of international law, mind you, and the added spying and restrictions on visitors, turning over their devices, etc., and the restrictions on devices in use by JA. Compulsory medical tests is new. Medical tests and paying for them were always previously at Julian's team's discretion. So that's the feedback that I got from them, and that's from a very, very credible source.
Yep,
I'm going to have to leave you guys.
It's all accurate.
No problem, Bjorn. Thank you for being here, Bjorn, and I look forward to some progress on the site, and hopefully some people will step up and help you with it.
Just before I go, I just have to say that the tone and what they're writing in those rules, it's completely outrageous, and I've been shocked by how supposedly serious newspapers are actually ridiculing him. They know what kind of situation he's in. It's not possible for them not to know. So I'm appalled by the childish and amazingly bad behavior and bad language people are using about a really serious situation. So
I agree.
With that, I'm gonna leave you guys and we'll talk more later.
Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, we have to wrap soon, guys. I've only got 13 minutes, and I know that there's now 100 literally comments that I haven't responded to yet. I just want to show you something. Let's have an upbeat moment. I just want to quickly show you something. Yeah?
Before you go, I just did want to quickly reply to your comment.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Yeah, that article, I've only seen the Google translation of that article, and I think it would be really important, the one that was referred to by the person you just quoted, by the recent consul of Ecuador. That would be an excellent article to translate into English with the teams. I put a little message there yesterday, I think it was, on translations, but I don't know if anyone's...
Oh, good. Yeah, so the trick is, if you want the translators to do something like that, post in translations channel, but put at translator and press enter, because that will tag them all. Just posting in the channel doesn't mean that they'll see it, but posting, putting at translator, and also our Spanish translation teams, and I mean also our German, our French, and others, but particularly our Spanish translators do amazing work and fast work, and they're really committed to this cause because many of them are from Ecuador and feel a very personal stake in the outcome of this. So you can also go to the #Spanish channel, which is under the channel tree for translations, and tag at Spanish. And I believe I think we even have a at Ecuador or at Ecuadorian tag.
Cool.
Yeah, and ask them to do it, and I'm sure you'll get a response from them.
Yeah, and also with respect to the particular issues, I was aware that I got your feedback that you just mentioned yesterday, and I had taken it into account. The document that I've just linked to that's out there is actually only addresses the new developments and the significance of the old protocol in the new situation, because when that was drafted, the standing arrangements that go back to 2012 were drafted with Assange's consent, and they were, of course, in good faith with the executive of Ecuador. And now that situation has changed, it's a slightly new context. So that's what the analysis just targets: how the current protocol threatens his security, and including the previous references, which were specifically about loss of consciousness.
Right, so this is the medium.com link, right?
That's it, yeah.
Okay, because I have just seen that it has been tweeted from Unity4J on Twitter.
Awesome. Okay.
Analysis of the threat of Assange's removal on medical pretext. Yeah, it's just gone out, or 5 people have retweeted already. So. Good.
I want to say I'm not, again, I'm a philosopher, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a journalist. I do occasionally write articles. So this is not an official statement. This is a reflection, but it's one that I think is fairly sensitive. I haven't done a lot of peripheral research on it, but I do have some. I've been following the situation with Assange for a long time, and I'm not going to say it's authoritative or anything like that. It's a suggestion, and I think it's an important thing for some people at least to pay attention to who are concerned about Assange.
In that medium, did you put the response that I gave you, that I was provided with?
I will update it with that.
Yeah, it's a good idea to include it in there just so that people have it for context.
Excellent. Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Okay, so what I just wanted to show you guys.
Seconds.
I just want to show you guys something happy, and here is something happy that makes me very happy. Anyway. Okay, so this is some amazing Unity4J supporters who went to the Ecuadorian embassy in Washington, D.C., and they made these awesome signs. Let's see if I can make it any bigger for you. Not really. They made these cool signs, and when my computer becomes responsive again, I'll be able to show you some more cool stuff. Here we go. Join the WikiBees. Join #WikiBees outside the Ecuadorian embassy in Washington, D.C. No extradition. Free Assange. Unity4J.com. Join #WikiBees. How awesome is that? Hey, Australia, bring Julian home. No extradition. Free Assange. And outside the Embassy of Australia. Look, gorgeous. That is just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And at Madison Square Gardens by the looks of it. That is so cool. And I'm just going to quickly retweet all of those because they are awesome. And this was Christine Assange's dream. for the Unity for J movement was that we would take this awesome online community that we're building and that we would convert it into on the ground real world actions to generate support for Julian. It is things like this, like we've been talking, Simon was alluding to it, so was Bjorn, and many other people have discussed the ways that we can see the handling of Julian's situation is being impacted by the increasing public awareness about his situation and the increasing scrutiny. And, for any part that Unity for J has played in that, or the Reconnect Julian streams or the vigils or anything else that we've done, you guys actually getting out there on the ground and converting it into real world actions, this is the game changer. This is the game changer. They can suppress and ignore us online to a certain extent, but they can't ignore people standing outside their embassy all day with Free Julian signs. So I would like to personally commend those activists, those wonderful people who made those signs and went and did that action, and we need to see more and more of it. And to be fair, we've only had 2 Unity for J days because it's just the last 2 months that we've been running them. And we already have dozens of cities around the world that we've had photos and videos from. So it's an amazing start, and it's just absolutely fantastic. Let's just push it and push it and push it, guys. Push it from here. So some really simple actions that you can take. I'm going to wrap the stream in the next 5 minutes. Some really simple things that you can do, like right now, are to go to @Unity4J on Twitter and retweet every single goddamn thing on that timeline, and go to @Assange Mrs. Assange MRS and retweet everything on her timeline as well. And then if you aren't already, get into the Discord server and volunteer your services. I think the Discord server can be quite disorienting to people who haven't used it before. You really need to message mods, or if someone asks for help, go into the #help channel, ask for help, ask to be connected to, if your thing is video, ask to be connected to the video team. If your thing is graphics, ask to be connected to them. If your thing is writing and reading, ask to be connected to the comms team. But let's step it up and let's support all the people who are doing amazing work in this movement. The more active that you can be, the greater chance of success for Julian. Okay, any last questions, guys? Let me know. Eurasian Enthusiast says, yeah, it is actually working. Julian was not an issue for the media here for a long time, but now every day comes something different. The most important factor, and I've seen and been a part of creating mass movements, and by mass movements I mean movements where every person in the country knows and is educated about the issue, and where dozens of cities march in coordination countrywide in New Zealand. 3 different movements I've been involved in that have penetrated public consciousness and awareness to that point. The key factor to getting from nothing to everybody is relentless commitment to never giving up. To never giving up. Like they say, first they'll ignore you, then they'll ridicule you, then they'll fight you, then you win. You never, ever stop talking about the issue. And eventually the mainstream is forced to pay attention. Forced to pay attention and forced to get on board. Black Cats Matter says, how best to counter the lies that Julian is biting the hand that feeds by suing for the restoration of his rights? Well, Black Cats Matter, I think it's pretty apparent that the so-called hand that feeds has been trying to throw him to the wolves. And when the hand that feeds is trying to throw you to the wolves, I think that you pointing that out and taking any method or action you have available to you in order to protect yourself is basic self-defense. In Julian's situation, it is where his human rights are being denied to him, of course he has to fight for those human rights, and thank God that he has qualified, experienced people willing to do that for him as well. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap it, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. We will be back next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and we'll have a whole array of different people here to talk to then, a whole lot more progress. Please go ahead and join the Discord and get out, get involved in any way that you can. But I deeply appreciate your presence. It was fantastic tonight to see so many new faces and to see so much conversation going on. And I'm actually really pleased that I'm watching you now all talking to each other and engaging with each other, because none of this should be dependent upon me. None of it. And let it be known, should anything ever happen to me, you guys are Unity for Jay, not me. And you working together can build this movement and make this movement a success, regardless of me or of any other individual who's in it. So the most important thing is that you make connections, not with me, but with each other, and that you undertake actions on your own initiative, not just because someone said, hey, to undertake this action. You guys, your imagination, your creativity, your relationship building, your networking is what will free Julian, not mine. I'm just one person doing what I can, but it's what all of you guys do that makes the difference. So on that note, I love you. Thank you very much. I'm going to blow you a kiss and then we're going to leave. See you next Wednesday.
Our number one enemy is ignorance. And I believe that is the number one enemy of everyone, is not understanding what is actually going on in the world. It's only when you start to understand that you can make effective decisions and effective plans. Now, the question is, who is promoting ignorance? Well, those organisations that try to keep things secret, and those organisations which distort true information to make it false or misrepresentative. In this latter category, it is bad media. It really is my opinion that the media in general are so bad, we have to question whether the world wouldn't be better off without them altogether. They're so distortive to how the world actually is, that the result is we see wars and we see corrupt governments continue on. One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly, with open eyes, go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
Julian Assange, thank you very much.